Okay, welcome everyone. As we welcome in Irving Fishbaum, Berish Gesseman, Saba, not sure who that is, Mel Zachter, Baruch Ian, Mark Frankel, Yitzi Fuchs, Dr. Guy, Moshe Lehman, Marshall Castle, Aaron Swain, Achman Chaplin, Naftali Javelin, Rabbi Kranz, Yitzi Muller, Ilya Shutman, Shelley Zeitlin. Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg is joining us. I'm not sure if that's Shimon Deer or Menachem Yamansky. I'm not sure who's that up there. That's Menachem Yamansky, Moshe Lehman, and that is, I'm not sure who that is. Okay. Let's get everything else going here. We welcome in David Helfgott, and here in Shul we have Michal Abram and Reuven Shanit, Rich Leonard, Reb Kramer, Gedalia Engel, Reb Avram, Zepkowitz. I think Berish. I don't think I greeted Berish. And Berish Gesseman. Okay. We are holding on the bottom of Tzadikei Amud Beis, and what the Gemara is going to do now is, if you remember, we said that the critical juncture, when Marshall borrows something from me, for him to be exempt, the critical juncture is that he should either rent me or borrow me together with the item at the time of the borrowing. If he borrows my service at the same time that he borrows my cow, or he rents my service at the same time he borrows my cow, he's going to be exempt. That's the heter of Ba'olav Imai. Even if I wasn't there anymore when the cow dies. The critical time is at the time of the loan. On the other hand, if I was there at the time that the animal died, but I wasn't there at the time of the loan, Marshall would be chayiv. So the question is, how do we know this? So if you remember, we have a machlokes between Rabbi Yishaya and Rabbi Yonason when the pasuk says "and," if it means that you need both. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yishaya. The opinion of Rabbi Yonason is that it's either or unless it says yachtav. Now here, the pasuk says both junctures with a connecting vav. V'chi yishal ish, and Marshall borrows, v'nishbar omeis, and it breaks or it dies. So, according to Rabbi Yishaya, according to Rabbi Yoshia, that puts the two times together. According to Rabbi Yonason, it's either or. So now the Gemara is going to explain how we know that the critical juncture is the time of the loan and not the time of the accident or death, both according to Rabbi Yoshia and according to Rabbi Yonason. Let's see it inside. We are holding by Abaya's Sover law, which is 7 lines from the bottom of Daf Tzadikei Amud Beis. Abaya's Sover law to Rabbi Yoshia. Abaya holds like Rabbi Yoshia that when it says the connecting vav, it means both. Or Mataritz L'kroi to Rabbi Yoshia. He explains the psukim according to Rabbi Yoshia. Rava Sover law to Rabbi Yonason. Rava holds like Rabbi Yonason that it's either or Mataritz L'kroi to Rabbi Yonason. And he explains it according to Rabbi Yonason. Now we're going to do this one at a time, slowly, as we welcome in Jay Siegel, who's joining us. Here comes Stephen Holtzman for our 25th Zoomer of the evening. So now, Abaye Savala Rabbi Yeshia. Abaye holds like Rabbi Yeshia. Remember, Rabbi Yeshia says that which it says V'chi Yishel Ish V'nishbar Oimes, it's not either or, it's together. When Marshall takes the loan and when the cow dies, together. Balav Einimai. The Mishnah says, if I wasn't with Marshall, Shalom Yeshalom. Now, since he holds that connecting Vav means both, so the implication is Taima Dolesa B'Travayu. That means that I wasn't with him both at the time of the loan and at the time of the death of the cow. If I was by one and not by the other, Marshall would be potter. But then it says in the pasuk the opposite. V'aksiv im bolav imay lo yeshalim. If I was with Marshall, with the cow, then Marshall doesn't have to pay. And since, according to Rabbi Yeshia, it means both because it's the vav means together. That means time of the isei b'travayu. I have to be by both incidents, by the loan and also by the death of the cow. That would not be enough to exempt Marshall. So then that's a contradiction. The first implication is if I was with if I was with any one of them, I would Marshall would be potter. And here it says that I have to be by both. So therefore, since to reconcile, we make a split. And we say, if I was there at the time of the loan, even if I'm not there at the time that the cow dies, Marshall is potter. But if I was there at the time that the cow died, but I wasn't there at the time of the loan, then Marshall is chayv. Now the Gemara will ask, okay, I know that you have to make a split decision in order to reconcile the two psukim, but maybe say the other way around. Say that if I'm with Marshall at the time of the death of the cow, he's potter, and if I'm there at the time of the loan, he's chayiv. How do you know which one? The Gemara is going to address that. But Laimalach, to reconcile the contradiction, if I was working together with Marshall at the time of the loan, whether it was I was borrowed or I was rented, I don't have to be there also at the time when it breaks its leg or dies. But if I was there at the time where it was broken or it died, that's not enough. I have to be there also at the time of the loan. Now Rava will again reconcile this according to Rabbi Yonason. Now remember, Rabbi Yonason holds that the vav is either or, because unless it says yaktav, the vav doesn't mean both. So therefore, when it says in the pasuk v'chi yishel ish v'nishbar oimes, it means either at the time of the loan or at the time of the calamity, the death, or the breaking its foot, or it being captured. So Rabbi Savalak Rabbi Yonason, Umetaretz L'Kroi Rabbi Yonason, and he explains and reconciles the psukim like Rabbi Yonason. The Tanya, Im ba'olav ima lo yishalim. If I was with Marshall, then Marshall doesn't have to pay. Now, since it's either or, mashma de isei b'travayu, it implies that it's enough that I have to be with him by both. But mashma nami de isei b'chada v'leisa b'chada pata, because he learns vav is either or. So that's mashma that if I'm at one time and not at the other, whether if I'm there at the time of the loan or I'm there at the time of the calamity, Marshall is potter. But then it says ksiv balav eini ma yishalom yishalom. When I'm not there, he has to pay. Mashma delesa b'travaya, that implies that I'm not there at either at times. That even if I'm not there by one of them, Marshall still has to pay. Chayiv. So that sends out a contradictory message. One part of the pasuk says it's enough if I'm there by one of the times, and the other part says if I'm not there by both times, then Marshall has to pay. To reconcile, again, we make the split. If I was either rented by him or borrowed by him at the time of the loan, for him to be exempt, I don't have to be there also at the time of the calamity. But if I was there at the time of the calamity, so now the Gemara asks, okay, I know it has to be one of the times is the critical juncture. But how do you know the critical juncture is at the time of the loan? Maybe the critical juncture is at the time of the calamity. So as I welcome in Richard Rosenzweig, it's good to see him. Says the Gemara, Eipachana, maybe switch it around and say that if I'm with Marshall at the time that it dies, then Marshall is potter. But if I'm there at the time of the loan, then Marshall is chayiv. So the Gemara says, Mistavrish she'ela adifa, it's more reasonable to assume that the time of the loan is superior, mishum de kamaisi lo l'rishusei, because that's the time that it goes into Marshall's possession. So the Gemara says, well, adarabah, shura meisa adifa, the time of the calamity is more critical because that's the time that he becomes chayiv to pay. Shekein chayiv b'einsin. So the Gemara says, yeah, but Eloi She'ela, if he wouldn't have borrowed it, then Shmura Mesa Mai of it, then he wouldn't be responsible when it breaks or when it dies. On the other hand, Vilav Shmura Mesa, if it didn't break and die, She'ela Mai of it, the loan would not make him responsible for anything. So we're kind of in a toss-up, which is the more critical juncture. Says the Gemara, Afilu Hachi She'ela Adifa, the time that Marshall took the loan is superior. That's when he becomes liable to take care of the animal, and therefore that's the time that I have to be either borrowed by him or hired by him in order for him to be potter. Rav Ashi says, now we can base it on a pasuk. We don't need svaras. We can base it on a pasuk. Rav Ashi Amakra, the pasuk says, V'chiyishal ish me imre eyu. When Marshall borrows from his friend, and then something happens, he's chayiv. But not if he borrows it with his friend. V'loyre eyu imay, and not if he borrows it with his friend, then only if he borrows it from me and not with me, that's when Shalom Yishalom. That's when he has to pay. Hooray, Eyu Imai, but if he takes the animal with me, potter. So you see it goes at the time of the Sheila. Says, well, if we learn it out from the word Re'ehu, then why do we need the pasuk to say Balav Imai and Balav Ein Imai? We learn it out just from the fact that it says Echi Yishal Ish Me'im Re'ehu. Iachi Balav Ein Imai Ve'im Balav Imai Lamali. So the Gemara says, well, this drasha is not so mochrach. It could just mean that the pasuk says, when you borrow from your friend, not to tell me you borrow from your friend, but not with your friend. Ilav hanach, if not for the other psukim that imply that there is one time that Marshall gets off the hook, and there's one time he doesn't get off the hook. Havamina hayorcha de crow. That's just the way to speak. It's the dibra kosav behoiva, as we say throughout Shas. That you borrow it from a friend. Not that it means you borrowed from a friend and not with the friend. Now the Gemara class interesting shilas. You know what we're going to do? I'm in a good mood today. We're going to make Marshall off the hook over here.
Oh no!
I don't know what.
Do that to me.
I don't know why I'm feeling so nice, but you'll see, once I say the case, you'll see, Marshall, if you change your mind and I should use you. But basically, what happened over here is Chatzkel borrows a cow to sleep with it.
No, that ain't me. Not in a million years.
It took him a very long time to decide that. Do you notice that?
Sometimes you should read ahead.
That's one for Barry's record.
Yeah. So anyway, I was feeling a little good. So Chatzkel borrowed my cow to sleep with it. The shaila is he going to be chayiv if an accident happened to it? So you'll say, what's the shaila? He borrowed it. What's the shaila? So let's see. If he borrows it to commit bestiality with it, do we say kiddush shaila in sheba inan? Yeah, when it says in the pasuk she'ela, it has to be in the normal way that people borrow it. And for that, people don't normally borrow it, and therefore he doesn't have liability. Why does he have liability? Mishum hana, because he has benefit from it. This for Chatzkel is considered benefit. The Gemara, by the way, is not going to resolve this question. It's not going to resolve any of these questions. Shala le'roisba. Marshall borrows the cow because he's proud to be seen with the cow. It makes him look like an industrious fellow. You know, it makes him look like an industrious fellow. Is he going to be responsible? Do we say mamoina ba'inan? He has to borrow something of value. And he did borrow something of value. Rashi says he has to benefit from the actual cow. And here he's not benefiting from the actual cow. He's just cowing around. Veleka. Now, here's another shayla. Shala lasas b'poches miprutamau. What if he borrows it to use it for the value of less than a pruta? So do we say mamayna ba'inan? He has to borrow something of value. Ve'ika, the cow has value. If he uses it for less than a pruta, that's not considered borrowing, and he's not going to be chayiv. Well, what about shal shtei paros? Marshall borrows 2 cows, and with each cow he uses a half a pruta of benefit. Lasas ben pruta mau. So, mi amrinan zil basar shoyalu Marshall. We go basar, Marshall and I. And Marshall borrowed the benefit of a pruta, and I gave him a loan of a benefit of a pruta. Ve'ika. Oidoma zil basar paros. You have to have a pruta benefit from each cow. V'kol chada v'chada lekem amayna. And here each cow did not provide monetary, which is at least the pruta, a monetary benefit. Now here's an interesting case. Mark and I own a cow in partnership. Shol mishutfin. He borrowed the cow from Mark and I. V'nishal loy echad mehem. And at the time of the loan, Mark went to help him. And then the cow died. So the question is, Mao, do we say, kuloi balo beinan? You need, in order to have the p'tur of balavima, you need the full owners. And here he only had half the ownership with him. Valeka. Oh, Dilma.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I'm having a problem with my phone already.
Me and the cow froze the rabbi, it looks like.
You see, what's going on here? Why are we having this problem? You see, my phone is giving me problems too. Wow. What's happening over there? What could it be? What could it be? It's showing internet. We're waiting to be connected back to our Olam. I know that.
Could just be a service issue.
What do you mean?
Yeah, from the cable company.
Yeah.
They might have a little interruption.
We had this last night also. Oh, now I don't have internet. See that? Oh wow, it's affecting the phone too.
Yeah.
If this happens much more, I'm going to have to get a different internet service. This is terrible.
Yeah, sometimes you have to reset your modem. Yeah, reboot modem.
Yeah? Should I go upstairs and do that?
Sometimes it helps.
What? I mean, just to pull out the plug and restart it.
Yeah.
Not working right. It's not working, so if you pull out the plug and put it back in, you're not losing it.
I think it might have just came back on. Baruch Hashem, we don't have this often.
It's everything, so it's not just your phone.
No, it's my computer.
It's everything.
Bang. There goes the coalition. Well, let me run upstairs and reboot the modem. Oh, maybe it's coming back on. Here we go.
I don't see him. He must be
I'm here. I'm here.
Rabbi Weiss, that I'm the one who knocked them off, right?
Okay, I'm here now.
Only in voice.
Right, Rebbe, we hear you. We don't see you.
I don't know what happened.
Now we see you.
I don't know what happened. Everything got knocked off. The color lotion got knocked off. Everything got knocked off.
You having a rainstorm there?
We're not.
Oh, wow. Maybe the squirrel got into the power. It was last night too, right, Rabbi?
Yeah, I had it a little bit last night also. I don't know. I mean, if this is going to continue, I'm going to have to change services. But anyway, well, I have Optimum. What does everybody have here? Optimum.
I'm stuck with Optimum too.
Okay, all right.
Rick, would you know of any other option?
Yeah, I know, Richard. I know that Facebook is on because I switched Facebook to cellular data. That's why I'm still on Facebook. But okay. So anyway, so we said that in the event that Mark and I owed an animal. Mark and I both owned an animal, and Marshall borrowed the animal, and Mark worked together with Marshall, and then the animal died. So the question is, do we say that do we say that kulei ba'inan? Kulei balav binan. The only time that there's a heter of balav imai is only if it's all the bailam, and here it's only half of the bailam. It's only Mark worked with him, or Dilma mehu palga didei miyamifter. So if the cow was worth $1,000 and he died, so $500 he's exempt from because Mark owned half of it. So he's exempt from that half since Mark worked with him. I didn't work with him, so he's chayiv the other half, but at least maybe he gets off the hook of half. Now, here's another shayla. Shutfin sheshalu. Let's say that Mark and Marshall owned a cow together. Mark and Marshall are in partnership. And Mark and Marshall Incorporated borrowed my cow. V'nisha le'echad mehen. And I worked at the time of the loan for one of them. Mao. Kulay shayel ba'inan. Do you need that the shayel has to work with both, with the full owners, Veleka, or Dilma Bahi Palga de Shaile, at least since I worked for one of them, so therefore for that half, Mias Mifter, maybe they're exempt. Shol Me'isha, now here is an interesting case. I borrow a cow from Mrs. Marshall. Vinishal Bala. And together I borrow Marshall also. But it was Mrs. Marshall's cow. Now Marshall has the right of usufruct of his wife's cow. So that Marshall has a Kenyan Paris. Or the other way around. Isha Shashala. Mrs. Marshall borrowed a cow. Vinisha Labal. And I worked for Marshall. So is that enough? Because Marshall has a Kenyan Paris on the cow. Mao. Do we say Kenyan Paris ke Kenyan Guftabi? That having the right of usufruct is like owning the cow, and then it would be a p'tur of balavin. I like. Now another shayla. Amalei Ravina l'Ravashi. Ha'omer l'shluchai. If I tell my agent, I tell Mark, say v'hishali imparasi. I tell Mark, go, and I'm lending Marshall my cow, go and work for me with Marshall together with my cow. So Mao, Bolav Mamish Ba'ina, the only time Marshall would be exempt is if I worked for him, Veleka. Oy Dilma, since I told Mark to represent me, Shluchi Shalodam Kamaisa is my agent for Ika. And that would be considered Balavimai, and if a mishap happens, Marshall would be off the hook. So Amalei Rav Achabrei Rav Avia Rav Ashi, Baal, the husband, where Mrs. Marshall borrowed something and I worked for Marshall. That's a pluk to Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish, whether King in Paris is Kikinyan Guf. Shliach, and in the case where I delegated a Mark to work together with my cow with Marshall, that's a machlokes Rabbi Yonason and Rabbi Yoshia. Baal pluk to Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish, whether Kinyan Paris is Kikinyan Guf. This is a Shas machlokes. The Itmar, Hamoicher Sadeu Lechaveiroi Leperis. I sell my field to Aaron to use the fruit. And now it comes the time of Bikurim, and Aaron brings the first fruit. Can he say the formula? In the formula, you have to say that I'm bringing the Priya Adama Asher Nosatali, the land that was given to me. But I didn't give him the land, I only gave him the fruit. Rabbi Yochanan maybe Vikari. Rabbi Yochanan says Aaron could bring the Bikurim and say the formula. Reish Lakish maybe Veinakari. He can't say the formula. Rabbi Yochanan maybe Vikari, because even though Aaron only has the right of the fruit, Kinyan Paris, Kinyan Agoftami. It's like owning the land, and therefore he could say Adam Asher Nasatali. Reish Lakish maybe Veinakari, Kinyan Paris, Lavka Kinyan Agoftami. In the case where I gave over my cow, and I delegated Mark to work together with Marshall. So whether we say over here Shluchei Shel Adam K'moisei, and it's as if I was working with Marshall, this is a machlokes, an interesting machlokes between Rabbi Yonason and Rabbi Yoshia by Nedarim. The Tanya Ha'imel Apotropos, I tell my CEO, Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg is my CEO. I tell him, and I'm going to Belgium, and I tell him, Yeshua Shmuel, any vows that my wife makes, I'm instructing you to annul. All vows that my wife makes until I come back from Belgium, hafala, you should annul it. Vehefala, yachal yumufar, and I might think it should be annulled. Talmud Leimer, no. Isha yekimenu, ve'isha yeferenu. Husband confirms and the husband annuls. Different Rabbi Yoshia. That can't be delegated. So it's literal. So Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg could annul it. Here too, according to Rabbi Yonason, if I told Mark to work with Marshall together with my cow, so it's Shluch Shel Adam K'maisei, and then if it dies, Marshall would be pater. Amalei Rav Elish L'Rava, what about this case? Ha'imel Avdai, if I tell my Eved Kenani, whose name is Tony, I tell Tony, say v'hishel im parasi. I want you to go and be loaned out to Marshall together with the cow. Now, so the Gemara says, it can be declared according to Rabbi Yonason that says that we say, even in this case, Shluchah Shel Adam K'maisei. And it can be declared according to Rabbi Yoshia, who says that we don't say Shluchah Shel Adam K'maisei. Tibay l'man yam Shluchah Shel Adam K'maisei. Hani mili shliach. That's only if I say that Mark should go work together with the cow. The bar mitzvah, because he has all the mitzvahs. Aval Eved, an Eved, the la bar mitzvah, he doesn't have all the mitzvahs of a man. Right? He doesn't put on tefillin, he doesn't have mitzvah to learn Torah. Like, maybe we won't say it. Even according to Rabbi Yoshia, who says that normally we don't say Shluchah Shel Adam K'maisei, it's not as if I was there, and Marshall doesn't get the pater, but Hani Mili Shliach. But an Eved is more than a Shliach. An Eved is like the master's hand. Aval Eved, Yad Eved ki Yad Rabbi Damya. The hand of an Eved is mamish like the hand of his master, and therefore, Marshall would be off the hook. And the Gemara says, Amalei mistavri Yad Eved ki Yad Rabbi Damya. So if I send my Eved to work together with the cow, and the cow dies, Marshall would unbelievably be off the hook. Now,
your friends then. Go on the front. Quickly.
my Shalimin, you're not on mute. I'm muting you. Okay. Now, bottom line of Tzadik Vav and Aleph, and I really apologize. It causes me pain when we have distractions such as this. But you must understand, there's absolutely nothing I could do about it except pray that it shouldn't happen. Boy Rami Bar Chama. Now Rami Bar Chama declared the following shaila. Baal benichsei ishtay. Marshall, with the property of Mrs. Marshall. Shoyel have, or soicher have. Marshall has the right of usufruct on his wife's property. Does he have a din of a borrower, or does he have a din of a renter? Now, what's the svara to say that he has a din of a renter? Because he has the right of usufruct on her property in lieu of the fact that if she was chas v'shalom lo'aleinu captured, he has to ransom her. It's tachas pirkuna. So in lieu of the fact that if she was taken into captivity, he has to ransom her, he has the right of usufruct. So it sounds like it's a rental arrangement. There's an exchange. So if he was using his wife's cow and a mishap happened, so if he's a seicher, he's pater and einzin. If he's a shayel, he's chayim and einzin. So the Gemara says, shayel ave, oy seicher ave. So Rava says, and here we have an interesting thing. You know, sometimes a person is so sharp that he misses something that's right in front of him. When a person is not so sharp, then he has to go it over slowly, so he doesn't miss things. But if a person is very sharp, because he's so sharp and he gets it right away, he doesn't have to study it so carefully. So Amar Rava lefum churfa shabeshta. Because of his sharpness, he made an error. Because what's the difference? Whether Marshall is a seicher or a shayel, his wife is working for him. Because a woman always does duties for her husband. So Marshall will never be chai, because it's always Baal of Imai. So therefore, it says the Gemara, Manavshach, Isha Lave, if he's a borrower, Shayla Babalami. It's a borrower with the owner, because the wife is always, doing things for her husband. Isha Lave, if he's a renter, Schiris Babalami. Ella says the Gemara, Kika Mebayle, what must be the Shayla? Kika Mebayle, L'Rami Bachama, Da Agar Mina Para. What happened is he rented the cow from his wife before he married her. So before he married her, he rented the cow from her. V'hadar nasva, and then he married her. So the question is, when he marries her and now he has the right of usufruct, he's a shayel, so that switches his status from a seicher to a shayel, and now when he becomes a shayel, it's Baal of Imai, because his wife is working for him, and then he would be pater. Do we say shayel have or seicher have? Is he a borrower or does he remain a renter? Shoyel Havi. If he's now a borrower, then va'asya shela babalim, now that he borrows it and he married his wife, so she's always working for him. So mifka, so va'asya shela babalim, mifka schira shaloi babalim, and it takes it out of the status of what it was beforehand, a rental without the owner, and therefore if an inus happens, he won't be chayiv. Or maybe he remains a renter, and therefore he was a renter from before, and now even though his wife is doing work for him, but that's after the time of the rental. So it's not Baal Avimai at the initiation of the rental. So the Gemara says, yeah, but even if he's a renter, it's a renter with a new arrangement. This now arrangement that they got married, and he's a shayl, and she's in his works for him. It changes the status from before they were married, where it was a renter without the owner. Even if we view him as a renter now that he's a husband, but it's a new rental arrangement, and it starts the clock again. The new arrangement is it starts the clock again. Now he's a renter with her working from him at the inception of this new rental agreement, and therefore it would be Baal Vimo from the beginning, and again he would be Potter. Rather, the Gemara says, Ella, ki kamebay l'Rami bar Chama. What's the question according to Rami bar Chama? Here, you got to hear this. What happened is Mrs. Marshall rented the cow for Mark. It's a new situation as we bring in Eddie Chazan now for our 25th Zoomer of the evening. As Eddie has just arrived in Timbuktu. If I'm keeping it correct, I'm drawing a graph of all his travels. I think Eddie is in Houston now.
That's correct.
You see, I know. It's I'm keeping track of all his travels. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Are you doing 42 Masais?
I did. Yeah, I did it. We did it just now.
So anyway, the case now is Alakika Mebai L'Rami bar Chama. These dafin, it just takes such a long time to say them. It's really amazing. It's really amazing. If you want people to really follow it, you really have to, say it slow. Alakika Mebai L'Rami bar Chama. What happened was Mrs. Marshall rented a cow before she was Mrs. Marshall. She was Ms. When she was unmarried, she rented a cow for Mark. V'hadar Nasva. And then she married Marshall. Now that Marshall married her, now he has use of the cow. Now, the cow dies. So the Gemara says, Va'aliba de Rabbanan, according to the Rabbanan, the Imrei Shoyel Mishalam L'Seicher, that the responsibility would be to pay the renter, so he would have to pay to his wife. Because to Mark only rented it, so there's no responsibility if it dies, right? So therefore, that the shayl pays the renter, so his wife was the renter. So like tibaylach, that's no shayla, because now that he marries her, right? So at the time of the marriage, he became a borrower from her. Devade shelim abalim. She's in his employ, and therefore he would certainly not have to pay her. Ki tibayalach aliba de Rav Yosi, that his responsibility to pay would be to Mark. We don't get you till 10. Ki tibayalach aliba de Rav Yosi. That the question is, according to Rabbi Yosi, that his responsibility to pay, the responsibility to pay is to the owner, to Mark. You have to pay the original owner. So then it depends. If Marshall is a shayel, so then he's chayav for the einsim, and he has to pay Mark. If Marshall is a seicher is not chayav for death. So my shayel have, or seicher have. So Rava says, I'm sorry, you're wrong on both accounts. The husband is not a shayel, and the husband is not a renter. He's not a shayel, and he's not a borrower. He's a buyer. And a buyer isn't responsible. So I'm a Rava Baal loy shayel ave v'loy seicher ave. He's not a borrower. He's not a renter when he has the right of the usufruct of his wife's payers. El lekeach ave. He's a buyer. Mid Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina. Dam Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina Tanina. Dam Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina. Ba'usha hiskinu. In Usha we enacted. You should know that the Sanhedrin, when it was exiled from the Lishkas Hagozes, from the chamber of the cut stone, in the temple complex, it was exiled to 10 places. And one of the places was Yavne, and one of the places was Usha. And when the Sanhedrin was exiled to Usha, they enacted, here's an interesting case. Chatzkel is married to Sarah. So Chatzkel has the right of usufruct of his wife's property. She, however, owns the actual property. So Isha shemachra benichse mulug b'chaye baila. If, let's say, she sold her property. No, it's not the usufruct, that belongs to Chatzkel, but she sold the property during the lifetime of her husband. And then umesa, and then she dies. So she sold the property to Mark, and now she dies, so Mark wants the property. He says, look, you had usufruct while your wife was alive. Now that she dies, I want the property. She sold it to me, and she owned the property. So Mark has a very good argument. But in Usha, they enacted that Chatzkel, the husband, has a din of a lekeach rishon. Habal moitzi miyad lekuchas, because he has a din of a buyer. And he was an earlier buyer. So he could take it away from Mark. Now the Gemara declares, I'm telling you, the clearing of these Gemaras are really unbelievable. Boy Rami Bar Chama, Bal benichse ishtoi mi mo'al. Listen to this case. Chatzkel is married to Sarah. Sarah inherits property from her father. In that property is something that was hektish. Now the husband inherits the right of usufruct. Do we say when he automatically gets the right of usufruct, he causes it to be transferred out of the rishus of hektish to his property, and maybe he should be considered that he's moyel, and maybe he has to bring a karbonash mi'ila. So Baal benichse ishtoi mi mal. Who's mal? Amar Rava, so Rava says, man limel. Who should be mal? Limel bal? The husband only wants to come into his rishus automatically something of heter. Datera nichalei deliknei. Isura. But Isur loy nichalei deliknei. He's not happy to acquire it. Timel ihi. She should be male. The truth of the matter is, what are we saying? That she should be male? Why? Because she causes it to be go to her husband. Says the Gemara, well, the Teira nami loy nichala did liknei. She doesn't want anything to go out of her rishus. It's a takana of the bezdin. Says the Gemara, nimelu bezdin. Bezdin only makes a takana for heter. Ki of the rabbanan takanta. The amru bal loy keach avein. The husband has like a buyer in the Yusufer leteira for heter liisura loy avad rabbanan takanta. Rather, if there's an item that he gets Yerusha from his wife, he's moil when he uses it. The husband is moil when he uses it, because then he takes it out of the Rishus of Hektish. Because then he actually physically takes money of Hektish and uses it for a secular purpose where the Kedusha goes off. Now, the Gemara says, Ibayalu. Marshall borrows from me a cow. And in the course of using it, he causes depreciation. Is he chayiv to compensate me for that depreciation? Ibayalu. Kash basar machmas malacha. If he causes it to decrease in value because of the work, so the Gemara says, you mean to say that's your only shayla? But if it dies when he works with it, he's chayiv? The only question is if it deteriorates. But if it dies, mechayiv, Marshall should be chayiv. Marshall says, Rabbi Weiss, why did you give it to me as a loan? Obviously to work it. You think you gave me it as a loan to lock it up in under a canopy? Name a lav look maybe kills the shelter. You didn't borrow it. You didn't lend it to me to keep it under a canopy. You lent it to me to use it. So that means that you were in agreement that I could use it. If it dies in the course of using it, you're not going to be mechayiv me. It's not a shaila that if it just has wear and tear, the potter, that Marshall is potter, because that's understood. That if I said you could borrow it, that's included in the allowance. Even if it dies in the course of just regular using it, nami potter. Damalei, because that's understood that I'm in agreement to take that risk, because lav lukma bekilsa the shelter. I didn't give it to him as a loan that he should keep it under lock and key. I understood that he was going to use it, and if in the normal course of using it something happens, he's not chayiv. Now, what about this case? How gathered the shol narga mechavre? Marshall borrowed an axe. Itba. And in the course of chopping wood, it broke. So also the Kami to Rava. Marshall came before Rava. Marshall is already, well known by Rava. Right? So also the Kami to Rava. He came before Rava. Amalei, Rava told Marshall, Zil Aisei Sade Delav Shonis Bey. Bring witnesses that you didn't use it improperly. There were a lot of people around. Bring witnesses that you didn't use it to try to, cut 50-pound barbell, right? You used it in a normal way. Thereafter, and you're exempt. Says the Gemara, okay, now listen to this shayla. V'il leka sadei mai. What if there's no witnesses? And Marshall broke the axe. The axe. There's two ways of looking at it. Marshall could give me the pieces, which has some value. Let's say that a new axe is $100. The pieces are worth $40. He could give me the pieces and $60. Or do we say, you keep the pieces, and you keep the pieces, and you keep the pieces, and give me a new axe? So the Gemara says, Marshall borrowed an axe, and he broke it, and there's no witnesses that he used it only in the normal way. Also, the Kami de Rav, he came before Rav. Amalei zil shlimle nargamalia. You give Rabbi Weiss a new axe, and you keep the pieces. Welcome, Mo. Amalei Rav Kahana v'Ravasi l'Rav. So Rav Kahana Ravasi said to Rav, Dina hachi? Is that the law? Does Marshall have to give me a new axe? Can't he give me the pieces and give me the difference? B'shasik Rav. Rav was quiet. In other words, Rav admitted that it would be enough for Marshall to give me the pieces and give me the $60.
Rabbi Weiss?
Yes.
You put my son's name down. They took him to the hospital. He has a little something with his heart. Chaim Mendel ben Moshe Yitzchak Halevi.
Chaim Mendel ben Moshe Yitzchak Halevi. You should have a refuah shalema b'mehera.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah. The Hilchasa, top line of Tzadik Zayin Amud Aleph. The Hilchasa Rav Kahana v'Rav Asi. The law is like Rav Kahana and Rav Asi. The Mahadale Tavre, that he gives me the broken pieces, or Mamalya la Demeimana, and he pays the difference. So if the broken pieces are worth 40, he gives me the broken pieces, and the new axe is 100, and he does the difference with cash. The Gemara tells us one more case. How Gavra de Shol Davla Mechavre. Marshall borrowed a bucket from me, itbar, and it broke. So here, also the Kami de Rapapa, Marshall came before Rapapa, Amalei, so Rapapa said, look, I see Sada, the loy shonis pay, just bring proof that you didn't use it in an unusual manner, be iftar, and you will be exempt.